Welcome to Broker to Broker podcast, brought to you by AIM, Association of Independent Mortgage Experts. I am your host, JP Hussey of the Hussey Team Mortgage Advisors. Our first guest virtually is Shashank Shekhar, Arcus Lending. What's up, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing good. And first of any kind is a good news, so I'll take it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, I got 4 monitors going right now in my office, and I close everything down because my attention span is like this. So I'm giving it all to you today, Shashank.
Yeah, I quit my Skype and iMessage and emails and calendar notification because let's do it.
That's right. And that's something we'll talk about too, about mindset and organization and blocking out everything. That's going to be something we're going to talk about anyway. So how are you, man? Where are you at home? You in the office? Where are you at?
I'm recording this from my office.
Okay, good. Yeah, I can see the backdrop there. You have a big office? So what's it look like?
No, so we have little offices across the country. We have now, 7, 8 offices. So this is, of course, I work out of the corporate office in Northern California. We are in San Jose.
Okay.
Not super big, as in Silicon Valley is a very expensive place. So this would be, less than 2,000 square foot. But this is, and then we have, as I said, we have offices in 7, 8 locations. We're just opening one in Vegas and Chandler in Arizona in the next 3-4 weeks. I just signed the leases on those offices. Cool. And those are much bigger than the corporate office. Those are slightly cheaper.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a small office for corporate, right? Especially because I kind of know your setup. You don't need a big corporate office, you know?
That's correct.
Cool. So family's good. Everybody's doing well. Right?
Yes, they are all doing great. We are all working from home, and just sometimes when I have super important calls like these, I just head out to the office. It's 10 minutes drive, so not a big deal.
Okay.
Got it and head back home.
Good. All right. So before we jump into a lot of the detail, I have some notes. We spoke Friday. We really want to get into this for really even before this COVID-19, we're going to be talking anyway. We're going to talk about some of the changes, but I want to give everyone a quick background of you and when you got into lending. I know it's been 12 years, right? Just 12-year anniversary?
Yes, just 2 days back. Yeah, 18th April 2008 is when I got in the business. So exactly 12 years to this day.
Exactly. That's cool. Well, congrats. That's impressive because I know you started small and like you just said, 7, 8 offices in 12 years. It's pretty cool. Let's give a little background. So 12 years, what were you doing before you got into mortgages? What made you get into this?
So after graduating from my business school, I majored in marketing. I worked for General Electric in their consumer finance division. I was in India, and then worked for a super tiny startup again in India. And the reason I moved from a company which had hundreds and thousands of employees to this company which had one was because I always wanted to start something on my own, and I wanted to learn how do companies scale from, say, 1 or 2 employee to become as big as they do. So I left all this really cushiony job of working in a place like GE and moved to this super tiny company just to learn from the founders on how they were building this company. And that company got me transferred here to the US. I worked with them for about a year and a half. They were in the financial services industry as well. And I was the head of business reporting to the president. And I was, year and a half into the country when it was late 2007, early 2008. And they were VC funded, which the funding has stopped because of how the industry unfolded at that time. Mm-hmm. They shut their shop, and I was like, I took this job just because I wanted to learn how to start a company and how to run my own company. And I thought that just gives me an opportunity to do something which I always wanted to do. And I know it was 2008, and I know that I was just a year and a half in the country, and I know that I had no capital, literally zero connection at that point of time. But somehow it felt as if everyone's leaving the industry, as Warren Buffett says, is that when everyone's buying, you should be selling. When everyone's selling, you should be buying. Something like that was in my head. It's like, if everyone's leaving the industry, of course, in the short run, it may not be something that may pan out, but who knows, in the long run it would. And the other thought was that if I now go back to corporate America and find another job, I may never be able to start something on my own. This is an opportunity. So even though the company shut down and I was new to the country, I saw that as an opportunity to start something on my own, which I've been at least thinking for the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like having that case of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, right? That was probably in your mind. You're in this big corporation and you always wanted to scale up and start a business, right? But one thing I noticed is you didn't really say much about like the mortgage side, right? You're that type of mindset where you wanted to grow a company. It didn't matter really what it was, right? You wanted to start something from the ground up and build it, right? But is there a reason maybe you picked the mortgage side? I know you came from that consumer finance, but
yes, it is. So I had the finance background, and even the company that I was working for, which got me transferred here to the US, they had a little bit of play on the mortgage side. They used to sell mortgage leads to other mortgage companies. So I kind of knew, I'd visited those clients, I had worked with them. So I knew how the industry worked, and that's what kind of helped me sell what we were selling at that point of time. So I wouldn't say it was completely blind, so to say, like I just randomly picked an industry. In fact, I had my license and everything, even working as a company, because the company was planning to get into mortgage origination. So I had my license. We had done all that research already. So I had some background, sure. And so when that company shut down, I was like, that's probably the only thing I know here in the US. So I can just either find another job or I'll do this, because we had done the groundwork and I can start. The one thing that I would say is that if I were to go all the way back to 2008, one thing is that when you are thinking of starting something of your own, I think what matters the least is your technical know-how and your skill. Like how good, like say if I'm in Silicon Valley, a lot of my friends are engineers, and they would come to me with product ideas or service ideas all the time saying, yeah, I know how to code this thing, I can program it, I can run it. And my question to them based on my experience has always been is that, do you know how to get clients? And that's what I struggled in the first 12, 18 months is because I had this, say, MBA background and working for big corporate and heading a business. So I had all these professional backgrounds, so to say, but when it came to really originating loans, I had no experience. And I started struggling from day one, so much that in the first 12 months, I did 7 loans. That's like half a loan a month. Even some of the worst loan officers have much better first 12 months than what I did. And so it's very important that should always be our first agenda or first thing on our business plan, is that if you're starting something new, we are going in a new market, we are targeting a new demographic, more than the technical know-how and the logistics and the operations, the first thing should always be sales. And if we can we get clients? Because if you can get that, everything, all the other problems can be solved, which is what I figured out later. But that always seems to be a challenge. And that's why you see loan officers 20, 25 years in the industry still struggling to find new clients or having consistent business, is because that's a puzzle they have still not been able to solve.
Yeah. I'm going to read some off my wall right now because this relates, right? So I look at this every day. My brother Nick has one as well, but it says every day, exclamation points. How do we get leads today? How do we sell those leads today? And how do we over deliver to those leads? So that's what I look at every day, because like you said, you can be the smartest person in the world, right? From a technical background, but if you don't have anybody to do it with, what's the point, right? Why do you think you struggled that first year? Was it getting the lingo of the industry and obviously finding clients, right? But do you think there was a communication thing there, just getting kind of comfortable?
Yeah, I think I struggled with everything. When you come from, say, a head of business kind of a role, you are more used to managing people. That's what you get paid for. And then we were a VC-funded company, so we were kind of comfortable on finances and everything else. When you become, say, a true loan officer, which is what I was, then it's about having the knowledge to find new clients, one client at a time, something that I had never done. I did that after my business school when I went to GE, but not in the last few years. And in a new country where I had literally the 3 people I knew were my ex-co-workers from the company that just filed for bankruptcy. So really, So they were, of course, in no hurry to buy a home or anything because that
Yeah, right.
company shut down. So if that's all the connection you have, because a lot of people who become, say, loan officers or real estate agents or financial planners, the first people that you get in touch with are your what is called sphere of influence, people you went to school with, or your neighbors, or your relatives. I did not have any of that. As in, I had no my closest relative lived in Canada. I had literally zero relative living in the US. I did not go to school or college here. I did not work here. The only people I worked with were like three people. So you would struggle. And we were in the year like 2008 when nobody was really dying to buy a
Yeah.
home at that point of time. As in there was very little financing, very little liquidity, all that. So a combination of all of that was extremely demotivating because I come from this position where I was head of business for this VC funded company, and now I'm struggling to find even one client who will do a mortgage with me. So it was both very, I would say that it was very humbling and disappointing and frustrating all at the same time. And so much so that at about 12 months mark, I was like, I don't think I'm doing the right thing, and this is probably not meant for me. I gave it a shot, and this is not going in the way I thought it would.
Yeah. I mean, but looking back, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people that started right in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to start getting into where we're at today quite yet, right?
Sure.
But you wouldn't take that back for anything. I mean, even though you went through that pain, this was the right time for you to start, right? Would you say, like, looking back, I know it's more complex than that, but kind of glad you started then.
Absolutely. As in, I think if you thrive in chaos, and then if you have say baptism by fire, so to say, then you are kind of set for a very long time. So if you get in the market like say in a 2016 kind of a market, or pre 2008 when originations were that easy because of subprime, then you are not prepared for a year like 2008, 2009, or even 2020, where we are talking right now. So I am so glad that all of that happened, because if that did not happen, then I would not have figured out a way to originate the way I did, which was very different from the rest of the industry back then. That's why what I started doing in 2009 was something which 99.99% of the industry wasn't doing. And if I had not started in 2008, if I had started in say an easier year, so to say, where it would have been easier to find a client, then I would have had a very different trajectory in terms of business. Maybe you and I were not having this conversation. Maybe I would not have done $235 million last year. Who knows? So looking back, I'm ecstatic that I picked that year. As in, I wouldn't pick anything else. And if it was not for the disappointment, if it was not for the frustration, if it was not for the humbling that I got that year, I would not have probably positioned myself the way I did. It says that necessity is the mother of invention, but if there was no necessity, there would not have been an invention.
Yeah.
So to say. So no, I totally agree. Looking back, I would not trade that for anything else.
Yeah, and that seems to be a constant with a lot of people I've talked to on this podcast that started then in 2008-ish. They wouldn't take it back for the world. Now, maybe I'm not talking to some people that were in it and just totally gave up, right? But no, that's a constant, and I really respect that, no doubt. So let's segue a bit here, because I want to get into some more detail, how you're running your shop on two levels, right? In terms of that organizational structure. We know you're still originating.
Yes.
But then you're also running the company as well. Like you said, you're opening up new branches. So I'd like to really start as you as a loan officer right now. And again, how many units did you guys do last year? Just your team?
620, 620 units.
Yeah. Okay. And how many on your personal staff for your lending team?
That's my personal production.
Okay. Well, yeah. I'm sorry. In terms of on your team, you have processor.
Oh, me and my three processors. Yes.
Correct. Okay. I remember that as well. All right. So looking at it from an LO perspective, all right, a lot of people get stuck. Yes. They can figure out how to get some leads, but they're running around with their head cut off, and they're spending a lot of time, and they're doing 5 units a month. Mm-hmm. Talk about your organizational structure, but then how to double that? How do we get to 10? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and I would walk through my journey as I moved from, say, half a loan a month to maybe 2 to 4, and then eventually we got to where we got to, and I was just strictly kind of a loan officer until about 12 months back, as in we did not start building the bigger organization, so to
Okay.
say, recruiting loan officers and opening branches until May of 2019. So that's kind of a recent development for us. But yeah, I would love to talk about that, because that's one of probably my favorite topics, is because I see that struggle all the time. It's one of the most common things that I'm hearing, even for loan officers who are part of Arcus Lending, and of course, loan officers across the country when I'm speaking at different platforms, is how do you possibly do those many loans? And it's not so much a question from the perspective of how do you get so many leads, which is of course just a segue of that, but more the amazement more comes from the fact is that how can you possibly do so many loans from a time management perspective, or from the organizational structure perspective, is that how are you structured that you're able to do that? And I would say there, of course, there is no one answer or just one thing that you can fix and get to that. But the biggest thing that you can work on is hiring the right people. It's not so much the quantity of people, like how many people you have in team. That's almost, I would say, insignificant and really not that important, versus how many of them are really taking your files as if it's their files. How many of them are committed and dedicated to your goals as if it's their goal? How many of them are loyal to the organization as if it's their organization? For me, that was way more important than figuring out, hey, how many people do I need? Because one person who buys into my goals and one person who takes the file as if it's his or her file is probably worth 2 employees who do not, or maybe even 3, maybe even 4. I don't even know what the value of that person is who is tied into your goals. So that has been my common theme in terms of building my team, is that the focus has always been on the quality. It's about what kind of people I'm bringing into my team. The first person that I hired 10 years back who was my first employee. She still works with me. And I can't even think that she would ever work for anyone else, even if you were to offer her 2 times what she makes with me, for example. And the reason is that when I bring in a team member, I have a very different way of looking at a team member. And it starts from the recruitment stage itself, is that when you're hiring someone, there are a couple of things that you need to be looking at. Is that when you are hiring, that's very important, because one of the mistakes that all of us do when we are running our business, and whether you are one person loan officer or running a 500 people show or 5,000, you are still running your own business. We are all kind of entrepreneurs. And one of the mistakes that we always do is that we hire when it's already too late. And that means that we get very desperate in terms of hiring. We are like, we already have 20 files. I have no idea how to work with this. As you said, as in anyone who is doing even 5 loans is running all over the place and is still completely overwhelmed by the thought of closing, say, more than 5 loans. It's because when we decide to hire, we are too late. And it's because that it's also the reason why we are late is because we are greedy. We are thinking of maximizing our compensation on every loan. It's like, why should I be giving $600-700 to a processor or to a new LOA? That's what in our head. And I don't blame that person, because that used to be my case as well. When I was doing half a loan a month, I wasn't thinking about hiring someone else. But the good thing that I did is that I started looking for someone when I was just doing 2 loans a month, when I actually did not need any help at all. As in, for 2 loans a month, you don't need any help. So I was at 2 or 3 loans a month, but I was realizing that I had much more potential in terms of doing much more. And that's when I started looking for someone. So that's the first mistake that we do, which is we are too late into hiring. We need to be looking at 90 days out and start looking at recruiting now. Because what that does is that helps us hire the right person. We are not in a sheer desperation to hire. And so we are not rushed into hiring a person just because we have 20 files sitting on our table and we need someone to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing. Second is, we put too much emphasis on skill and experience while hiring. So if I'm hiring for a processor, I would be looking at, wow, she has 10 years of experience as processor, or she can run DU and she can do all of that stuff. Don't get me wrong, all of that is very important. If I'm hiring an engineer, I need somebody who can code. If I'm hiring a processor, I need someone who can run DU and
Sure.
submit loans to the lender. But that's really not my biggest concern when I'm hiring. That's kind of given. If you can't do that, then of course I can't hire you as a processor. I can hire you maybe as an assistant or somebody. So my bigger focus, even while interviewing all the time, is figuring out the attitude and the culture match with the organization. And that's why I said is that for me, quality is much more important, is because I'm interviewing them for questions like, hey, what was your worst experience when you processed them? Give me one example of the absolute worst experience that you had with a client or with a loan officer. I'm trying to hear, how did they handle that? Give me a really bad example when you completely overshot the closing date and everyone was screaming at you. How did you handle that? So I'm trying to figure out more from an attitude perspective, is that how does this person react to things when it goes wrong? Because when it goes right, everyone can handle it. It's not really that big a deal. What happens when you are doing 5 loans a month, and then suddenly we get a time like, say, March 2020, and that 5 loans becomes 50? What do you do overnight when that happens? So I'm questioning them for like stuff like that. Not so much about, hey, can you run DU? And because if you have 10 years of experience being a processor, or 5, even 2, I know you can do all of that stuff. You must have figured it out. So when I'm asking them those questions, that gives me more in-depth information, more about their psyche, about their attitude, about how focused they are on customer service and all of that. So that helps me hire people who are, say, more attuned to what my goals are. And because I'm in the business to give the client service 6 or 7-star client service, because of which they will come back to me. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this call have the same kind of goals. As a lot of us have good intentions. We just don't execute it very well, either because we are too busy or the people that we hired are not a right fit. So I think if you fix those 2 things when it comes to recruiting, that you recruit in advance and you recruit more for attitude and culture than for skill and experience, that's a great start in finding the right quality of people.
And not to cut you off, Shashank,
sure.
but I mean, it makes total sense. I'll bring up an example myself. We had, it's my brother and I, and we were looking to hire. We had someone lined up. Literally, her hire date is the day the lockdown went into effect. We were too late. I should have hired at least a couple months beforehand, right? But we saw things picking up. Hey, I saw you in Irvine. We're in, that's when everything kind of went haywire. So we hired too late, 100%, right? But I will give myself some credit. We were looking at the right people that fit our culture. And we wouldn't just say yes to anyone with experience. This person actually doesn't have much experience, but she fit our culture. So that's kind of on hold for a second, but I'm a prime example of hiring too late, 100%. We're only a year and a half in. We are looking at finances. We're making sure, it's complex, but we hired too late. So I'm a prime example. And a lot of people say this as well.
Yeah. And a lot of people do that. It's not as if I have timed it correctly every time, but I've learned from my mistakes, and that's where it is. And so as in 2 or 3 of my best people that I can, if you were to ask me who's my number 1, number 2, number 3, without which this company can't run, all 3 people were hired with very little to no experience. And so that's what I'm saying, is that and the people that I have fired within 30 days of hiring have had 15, 20 years of experience doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Just proving the point that that's not the be all and end all. And then once you hire, so just continuing with that conversation, JP, here is that because that's just the first step that you do that. And sometimes you will still get it wrong. I'm not saying that this will be 100% good hire every time. But once I hire, and we talked about this in Irvine a little bit, is that I am very, I'm a kind of manager that allows people to make mistakes.
Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah.
And this is very, very important, is because in our business, mistakes will in most cases result into financial loss. So this is not just a mistake, which is a mistake and you learn from it, because it will hurt you some way financially, which is more a direct hurt than anything else, because you can immediately see that, oh, you lost $1,000, you lost a 3 or 5 or 7. I remember my very first processor that I had. She was a contract processor we're working with, and the TRID had just come into effect. And she was an amazing processor. If she has not moved out of California, I would still have been working with her. But TRID had just come into effect. We were doing a loan with Citi, and she forgot to disclose the upfront compensation. And because she was still kind of used to the GFE days where you can change anything 3 seconds before signing if you wanted to,
yeah, right.
No big deal and all of that stuff.
Good old
and we
days.
get to closing, and Citi is saying that now you can't add that fees that you did not add upfront. And imagine I was doing half to one loan a month, and that was a $7,200 loss that I made on that loan.
Yep.
And I was completely cool with it. I told Gretchen, hey, this wasn't intentional at all. You are an amazing processor. You made the mistake most of the people might have, as you did everything you could. I was totally fine with it, is because I knew that this wasn't a mistake that she intentionally made, and she did everything that she could. And I have learned from that so much, is that I continue with that philosophy. When I hire people now, I let them do the stuff that they feel uncomfortable about, but I let them do it with the empowerment saying that, hey, go ahead, do it. And if you make the mistake, I've got your back. Because you can't be one and not be the other. My philosophy for leadership, JP, and I took some notes here, is that you need to care personally, at the same time challenge directly. Because if you just challenge directly and do not care personally, all you are is that's what I call obnoxious.
Yep.
Obnoxious aggression. All you're doing is that, do this, why this is not done, as in you can do 5 more loans, why are you not doing it? That's challenging directly, but there's no empathy there. And if you do but if you care personally, which is you're just like, oh, this is all a family, and you're like my brother and you're like my sister, but you're not challenging them directly, then I call that ruinous empathy. You're ruining everyone. You're ruining your own company, you're ruining your own production, and you're ruining them because you're not challenging them to get better. And if you do nothing, like you are a stoic manager who neither challenges them directly, not care them personally, then I call that manipulative insincerity. You are so insincere about both about yourself and about their progress, is that you're not doing anything. So it's very important, because a lot of leaders do one versus the other. We know about leaders who would challenge directly. They will be like, okay, I'm sure you can do more. That's probably a motivation. I know if you do 4, you can do 10, whatever. Or there are leaders who are just about, everything for us is family and we treat each other like family, but they don't challenge, they don't have that crucial conversations.
Yep.
They don't have that uncomfortable conversation that you need to do. And thankfully, my leadership style is both, is that you care personally, at the same time challenge directly. So you say, hey, okay, I'm challenging you directly to do this, but you know what? I know that you may not be qualified enough to do this. So if you make the mistake, I got your back. If we practice that kind of leadership, then we started the conversation saying that we need quality of a staff and not so much quantity. That's where I get those kind of people where they think the files are as important to them as it is to me. Or the company is as much their company as it's mine. And that's a kind of dedication and commitment and loyalty that you need from your staff. Otherwise, you could just keep churning out people after people all the time. Is that, hey, I hired someone, she left in 6 months. I hired someone, I trained him, he became his own loan officer. I hear that all the time, is because as a leader, at some point of time, you have to look back and see that, am I effective as a leader? Like, why does this happen to me all the time? Like, at some point of time, it has to be you. It can't be them all the time. So, and that's a reflection that we need to make. And if we are not an effective leader ourselves, that's a progress that we need to make at our end, than to blame the candidates all the time. Because I hear that all the time. Hey, I tried this, I hired this one, she left. I had this one, she was bad. She wouldn't work after 5. She would take 4 days to process this. As in, it can be their mistake every single time you hire.
Yeah, I can see how much this means to you. You have descriptions for every different type of leader. I saw you looking at your notes, right? And so this is obviously something that you continue to work on as your company's growing. Man, it's really cool. I mean, there's 3 stages as I'm writing notes down as well is, obviously hiring quality, not necessarily has to have a certain type of experience, right? So you're hiring the right people, but you can't just hire and just, have a good day. Now you have to manage those people correctly so they stay, right? So it's almost a 3-part type system from what I have written down. That's really cool.
Mhm.
Now to segue off of that, now 11 years, loan officer, you have your team of 2 to 3 processes, whatever it might be over those years. But now you guys made a big leap just in the past year.
Yes.
Now you're growing the company.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can we talk a little bit, segue to there of, okay, you're growing your own loan officer business, but now you're growing the company. What challenges have you run into? What are you doing right now to grow so rapidly?
A lot. So
Yeah, right?
it's like a repeat of the first 12 months of 2008 all over again.
Yeah.
Like
right?
you start something new and you struggle with it. But again, it's the struggle that makes you, and that's how it plays out when you start something new, and you have to live with it. By the way, that's a mindset that you go in with if you're trying something new, whether you're trying a new strategy or you're trying a new tool or a CRM. Again, we hear the same kind of complaints all the time. Hey, I tried this did not work. I tried this did not work. Is because the mindset that we have to go in when we try something new is that it's going to be hard and it will take long before we will come even close to perfecting it. And that's if you go in with that mindset, then you've kind of given yourself, you're already thinking in that direction versus saying that I implement this new CRM and tomorrow everything will change when I wake up. That's a mindset. A lot of people implement a new technology, a new strategy with that same kind of mindset. Is that somehow that will be the thing that will change everything. It'll be the silver bullet they've always been
Right.
looking for. And you and I know that, JP, that almost never happens. And
Nope.
in fact, let's say that never happens. Let's even take that almost out. So when we pivoted into hiring, first of all, the reason why I kept that on hold for such a long time, even though I have gotten requests for, I'd say, last 4 or 5 years, as I made the top 200 loan officer list, 5th year in my business. So people have seen me on that. I've been speaking and doing a lot of things. The reason why I kind of put that off for a long time was because I personally wanted to be in a position where I thought that I can have the time and the leadership and the value add that these loan officers need when they move companies. So when someone leaves something and comes to you, they have a certain goal and desire and certain ambition when they do that. And you as a leader fail them when you fail to deliver on it. So if I leave a company A and come to Arcus Lending, it should be with, okay, this should be better for me. This should be something where I do better as a loan officer. I make more money. I have better work-life balance. And if I fail to provide that as a leader, I think that's my personal failure. And that's the mindset that comes to me even from just my small team that I had. As in even for them, I was like, I need to give them better lifestyle. And that's my job as a leader. So similarly, when the reason why I put that decision off for a long time is that I personally wanted to be a place where I have tried enough ideas where I can teach them on what to do. I have become strong enough where I can lead them. I have the technology and the processes and the systems in place that they can replicate. Because a lot of time we try to, as business owners or company owners, we try to recruit too quickly when it comes to loan officers. If you have not reached a point where you think you have given a lot to your personal production, you should not go to the second stage of recruiting loan officers. I was talking to someone who's speaking at AIM conference in Florida last year, and somebody came to me and they were in the business, husband and wife couple, and they were in the business 25 years, and they were still struggling. And asked them why are you struggling? And one of the things they said, hey, we've tried everything. We hire these loan officers. We work with them for a couple of years, and then they leave, and then we hire another loan officers. And I said, how many loans do you guys do personally? They said, oh, we have a lot of potential. We know everyone. We have been in the business 25 years now, but we haven't put too much time into it. We get a couple loans here, and then we lose track because we hire loan. That's a wrong strategy to follow. So if you are thinking, as if you're listening to this, and if you're thinking of hiring loan officers, I would suggest first work on your personal production to a point where you are like, even if all the loan officers were to leave me, I would still have a comfortable business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at two fronts. One is your personal front, which is you are comfortable and confident that you have a personal production. And two, hopefully while doing that, you have learned enough which you can teach to the loan officers who are coming on board. You can be the leader that they can look up to. And that's why I waited so much longer than most people do, is because I wanted to be in that position. So thankfully, when we pivoted last year, I realized that the struggles that we went through, and we've hopefully taken care of most of this stuff, is that everything that I did as a personal producer, all the technology that we use and the processes and the systems and the human resources that we had, all of that was inadequate when I started hiring. For example, I was working on Calyx Point. I realized that Calyx Point would not work for, if we want to do $600-700 million this year, which is our goal, and to cross $1 billion in 2021, Calyx Point does not support that kind of production in terms of reporting and everything that I need. We had to change that. And just in terms of processing, the way I would work with my processors, it was as if they knew everything about me. So they knew exactly how Shashank works. And so it was much easier. Now we have 20 loan officers who have all different personalities, and we are trying to work through them. It took me months to figure out the processes and system that will be universal and work with all of them. So we had to work through technology. We had to work through processes. We had to hire more people. We had to change offices. We had to do all of that. And that's what I'm saying. It was, again, the same in terms of the experience. It was exactly the same thing. It was, once again, why did I do this? So I was doing pretty well with my personal production. I could have just stayed that way. Why did I do this? To go through all of that. But again, the same answer is that if you don't go through that, then you don't go to the next level of growth. And that's what we were seeking, is that I was trying to build a company instead of just building my personal production. And if I had to do that, then I had to bring in more loan officers. I had to open more branches. We had to increase our production. And that was the only way of doing it. But again, a learning experience is that what's the right time to do that? And when you bring it over, what are the kind of changes you should be willing to do and you should be ready to do? Because I could have let my ego come in the way, saying, yeah, I'm a $200 million producers. These loan officers produce $10-20 million. They shouldn't be teaching me what I should be doing. But then you need to put yourself in their shoes, because now you're their leader, and see what are their struggles at their level of production. And how do you make a company, or how do you build a company that supports their goals and needs?
Yeah. So what was the itch you were trying to scratch here? Like you said, like you're producing, you're a loan officer. What in your mind? Did you need a new challenge? Or you said you weren't ready for 11 years, but now you decided you wanted to. Like, what was in your brain that said that to do that? Because I'm sure there's people out there that have produced for a lot of years and want to grow it.
Yeah.
What was it?
Yeah. So for me, the itch was that I wanted to build this company more like a company than just a personal production. So when you are producing yourself, the company really has no value, so to say. You have your value, as in terms of, if I'm talking about financial value, or the net worth of the company is tied directly to you as a person. If something were to happen to me, or if I say 5 years down the road, I was like, okay, I don't want to personally produce anymore. No immediate thoughts, but say if that were to happen for any reason, the company suddenly loses all its value, because the only rainmaker who is there no more. Yep. So, and I started having the thought, I was like, okay, how am I building a legacy for this company? How am I taking the influence and building it bigger? And more importantly, for me, the thing, JP, was that everything that I have learned in this business for the last 10, 11 years, how do I build the next generation of leaders? How do I bring in more loan officers from Arcus Lending who can make the top 200 Scotsman Guide list, for example? How can I build the next $100 million producer? And unless they are my protege, unless they work with Arcus Lending, I can't do that. So for me, it's both a selfish goal, in the sense of, how do I take all this learning and give it to some of the other next generation loan officers? And also a bigger goal, so to say, at the company perspective, saying, how do we build the next level of growth within the company? Because if I were to just be a personal producer, I don't see how I would do $1 billion in origination. And even if it did that, that's not the kind of life that I want to live.
Yeah.
And so, but as a company, I can do a billion, I can do two. It's just sky's the limit depending on where I want to go. So yeah, as in it wasn't really an itch, as you said, but
Yeah.
it was definitely something much bigger than myself as a person, because as a personal producer, it's just you who is all pervasive and the only value to the company
Yeah.
and even to the industry.
And like you said in the beginning, right? You came over here from India. You're working with a large corporation. You wanted to build a company. Had
Yes.
nothing to do with mortgages, right? So this is just the path that you've been on, really.
Yeah,
Maybe it took
exactly.
you 11 years to feel comfortable to get to the next step, but this is truly what you've had in mind. That's pretty cool.
No, absolutely. Yeah, this is it's like a mind map that you have, and you're just following it. It's just that at some cross sections take longer, and then you just stay there longer, and then you take the next freeway, so to say. And it's just you're going in the direction that you envisioned in the beginning, and it just could take longer than what it took, what you may have thought in the
Okay.
beginning.
All right. Well, that lets us segue to you talk about mind maps and freeways and all this fun stuff. Let's talk about your day as a loan officer right now. You have a lot more on your plate, of
Sure.
course, since you're building the company.
Mhm.
But let's just do it from a loan officer perspective in terms of how your day looks and the structure. Could you give some points there, go into some detail that maybe other people could mimic?
Sure, absolutely. And then I think for a day to work very well, it starts the night before. That's how I work on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I would look at my calendar, how it's structured the next day. I would look at the emails, whatever I need to work on. That tells me a couple of things. Is that how much time do I have, say, on that given day, depending on my meetings, everything, to work on the business. So if I have to work on, say, bringing in new technology or process improvement, or I have to have a call with my processor, so I can block some of those time. If it's a really busy day, then I know that then tomorrow might not be a day. We'll pick up Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever, to do that. The other thing it tells me is that how early do I need to wake up? Like if I sleep with, say, 20 emails in my inbox, then I might have to wake up at 4:45. If I sleep with two emails in my inbox, then I can wake up at 6:15. I can still make it happen. So it helps me decide, and it gives me kind of a peace of mind going to the bed. Is like, okay, I've reviewed what's up for tomorrow. I'm up for the challenge. And based on that, I'll just wake up so that before the world wakes up, I would have probably caught up into what I'm doing. So that's one thing. As I said, I usually my day starts the night before. Then when I wake up, also my morning routine is kind of very important for me. I started meditating back in 2016 when I was really struggling, in the sense that one of my biggest goals ever in my professional career was to make the Inc. 500 list. The Inc. 500 list is a list of the 500 fastest growing private companies in America. And there are 6 million companies in the US who qualify for that. So try to be one of 500 out of 6 million companies to make that list. But I always wanted to.
Cool.
That was one thing that when you said that you started with some vision, one of the visions, maybe not in 2008, but maybe around 11, 12 was someday I want to make the Inc. 500 list, because every great company that I know, whether it's Microsoft or Intuit or anything really, at one point of time made that list. So it was just it's like bucket list. Like I want to make that Inc. 500. So 2016.
Did you make it? You made it, right?
We made it. Yes.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I was, yeah. So we were struggling in terms of the numbers that I wanted to get and everything. And that's when I kind of got into meditation. That's
Okay.
a practice that I started that year, just to give myself as in the clarity of thought that I needed in running my everyday's business. And that really helped me a lot. As in before that, for me, meditation was just a way of releasing a stress. And I, as a person, rarely get stressed. So I was like, this thing is really not much of a use to me and all that. But I realized that at so many levels, it's so helpful. And so I've kept that practice even now. And that's something, 20 minutes of meditation in the morning. It's something which is very important for me. Just to be grounded, just to have clarity, just to be calm, to get the day started.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so that's where we start. I could finish up some emails depending on where I was the night before. And then I wake up the kids, make them breakfast, drop them to school. I have two daughters. So yeah, I dropped them off to school and come to work. This is a usual day before the COVID-19, of course.
Right.
Hasn't changed much other than the fact that I work from home. And then the usually the first thing that I would look for in my email are the leads, are the new leads. That's always is my first order of business on any given day. It's like the revenue needs to come first. That's always more important. I'll work on the leads first, whatever needs to be done. And then I'll work with my operations team. So 3-member processing team is that just getting and usually with my processing team is the relationship is so well, it's again, because of the quality of the staff. It's not so much about going through every loan and where it is. It's more about, hey, do you have a problem on any loan that I can help you with? So I don't need a status update on every file. I know that if they are handling it, it must be going well. So if they have a problem with any file, the underwriter came back saying the DTI is not working, or we might not be able to meet the closing date. So I try to handle a lot of problems for them. I say, do your work. And if you run across a problem, let me know and I'll help you out.
Yeah, we have a hot loan type situation. Yeah. We won't go through the whole pipeline. Because why? But if there's hot loans, let's address them and move on. Okay.
I have never done a pipeline review with my processors ever.
Cool.
It's like if you are not good enough to manage your pipeline, then you're not good enough to be my processor, is what my take is. And if you are good enough, then I don't need to be bothered about managing the pipeline. I'll let you handle it. Yes. Yeah. And if that's the case, then just let me know where the problems are. If there are 3 problem loans, I'll work on it. Whether I have to talk to the underwriter, talk to the borrower, research the guideline, whatever I have to do, I'll do that, fix it. Again, I try to fix the problem while we are having the conversation. I usually don't park it. Saying, hey, we are running into this. Okay, I'll say, show me the pay stub. Let's run it. Okay, show me the tax returns. Let's go over it. Let's call the underwriter. So I try to resolve the problem as it happens, like while I'm doing the meeting. Okay. That's another thing with my time management, is that usually anything that takes less than 10 minutes, I try to resolve it as and when it happens, versus parking it and then trying to get to it later.
Okay.
Other than that, JP, really, those are the 2 things which are kind of sacrosanct. Other than that, it really depends on what other meetings do I have. If I have lesser meetings on a day, I'll work more on the business than in the business, because again, I let my processors handle it. There could be client calls, there could be other calls, as in, of course, now I have loan officers and other stuff that I need to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, our days are still, everyone can talk about structured time block here, do this. No. I think we have to give in that our industry, it's hard, and you have to be reactionary. But if you have 3 or 4 simple things, like you said, meditating, night before, leads first, revenue first, then some hot loans or issue loans, that's it. Then kind of let the day take you, right?
You need to, as in one of the things that I hear a lot of coaches and trainers talk about is that time block every second of your day. Mortgage business is not where you can do that. As in we talk about the fact that we need to be working on important stuff and not urgent stuff all the time. But for us, a lot of urgent stuff is important as well. And if the borrower is sitting there trying to close on a loan and the docs are not out, that is urgent, but that's also important, because that borrower is a potential referral source. That borrower might have come from a realtor who is a referral source already. So in our business, a lot of urgent and important they're kind of intertwined, because all of that is important. And that's why when you go through my calendar, I don't really have, other than rare days when I absolutely have to, I don't keep my calendar super packed, is because I allow for these things to be there. I allow for these things to be on the calendar, because I know that these things will happen. That's the kind of business we are in. Is a lot of things are urgent stuff, and if you don't have a lot of open spaces for that, then you're not able to handle those problems on time. And so something which was urgent, which was also important, now you have missed out on it. But having said that, if you have a lot of processes in place, like I'll just talk about a couple of stuff here.
Yeah.
Which helps you avoid this urgent stuff. Like, we do a ton of due diligence at the time of loan submission. And the reason we do that is because that helps us avoid this urgent stuff later on. Like, if you have 1 day to loan contingency and the underwriter just suspended the file, now it's urgent because you did not do the due diligence up front of reading the tax returns right, or doing a VOE upfront if they were commission or bonus. These are some basic stuff, but a lot of us don't do it. We just take all the documents that the borrower gives us, just send it to the underwriting or processing, and just wait for what happens, right? So doing a due diligence on loan is also helps us build like Amazon Prime like processes, because then you're guaranteed that the loan will approve. And that's why 12 years in this business, we have never had one loan decline in underwriting for credit, is because of the due diligence we put up front on file. Not one loan ever. It may have been declined for appraisal or title or other stuff that we did not know up front, or any information which was not disclosed to us up front, but nothing which was disclosed up front. So if you do that, if you put an extra 15, 30 minutes into that, that will prevent urgent stuff later on. One of the things that we send out within our initial disclosures is that we tell the clients the things that you can or can do during the loan process.
Yep.
How many times we have seen loan officers complaining on social media is that their borrower bought a car the day of closing or 2 days before closing. And to me, it was like, dude, you are complaining because the borrower did that. It's because you are a pathetic loan officer for you to allow them to do that.
Yep.
It's because they were doing it for the first time. They had no freaking clue that buying a car or furniture before closing is a bad thing. You just assume that they know it. So we tell them upfront, hey, these are things you can do. As in jokingly, we tell them you can't even buy pizza during the loan process. You have to check with me. So we kind of keep it humorous, but what you're trying to tell them is that, look, these are the things that you can do. So that we don't get this urgent stuff at closing, where it's like suddenly we have a new inquiry that's showing up. Or we go through the CD the day before they close. So we walk them through the entire CD line by line, so that when they're signing, again, there's no urgent stuff saying, hey, where did this $1,000 admin fees came up? As we never talked about this. Or how come this is an ARM loan? Always thought it's fixed loan. So there are a ton of things that you can do as part of your process and systems that avoids urgent stuff.
So processes are key.
Yeah.
Like we've all heard this, but I think people get lazy and they don't put them in place. Spend the extra time, put them into place so it can kind of flow, because this is going to lead me to the next thing, right? Life work balance. Like you're a busy man. You have 2 kids at home, right? What are you doing? I mean, obviously the process is in place, having good quality support staff, that helps because that leads to your family. Because we're in a industry that really is mixing life and business, because you do loans for friends, whatever, however it might occur, it can get messy, right? So my big question to you is, how do you shut it off? I know you're working the night before to prepare, but how do you shut it off so you can be there with your family?
Okay. So again, the number one thing is the 2 biggest things you mentioned already is that if you have a consistent process in place, you will have less urgent stuff. Mm-hmm. If you have quality staff in place, they will take care of a ton of stuff that otherwise comes to you. So those 2 things are something that you need to work on. It might take months, years. I don't know how long it takes. Again, these are not the things that you can build overnight, because as in for me, it took a long time to build these stuff. But once you have those 2 things, then you need to decide what do you want to say yes to and what do you want to say no to. It's very important. Every time when we say yes to something, JP, we are saying no to something. So when we say yes to a client call at 6:30, we are saying no to playtime with our kid. Because we don't think this. We just think of the yeses that we say all the time, and we forget about the no's that we are doing simultaneously while we are doing yeses. So it really depends. See, I'm not saying one is right, one is wrong, really. As in, if you are somebody who is fine with working 16 hours a day, and you have zero guilt about the fact that you spend your time with your family, and your family is fine with that, if that's a lifestyle you want to lead, then I would not say that my lifestyle in some way better than yours. It's a personal goal that you have. But if your personal goal is, which is what I had, as in I started when my first daughter was, she was in kindergarten in 2008, actually even preschool or something. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I promised her and my wife is that I don't know how big this business will be. And I had no idea. As in people talk about vision of being the $100 million producer the day you started, I was like, I would be lucky if this thing lasts a year and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, you did 7 loans, Shashank, in first year.
Exactly.
Half a loan a month.
Exactly. So one of the things that I told her is that, look, I don't know what will happen to this, but whatever happens to this, I'll still pick you up from school every day. I'll still go to all your events, whether it's school event or whatever you do, and you will still have me after 5 o'clock every single day. And thankfully, other than rare exceptions, in 12 years, I have kept that promise, not just to my older daughter, but now to my younger daughter as well.
That's
and
awesome,
then
man.
for me, that is important. And that's what I'm saying. It's a question of personal goals. If that's not what your personal goal is, that's fine. As in, I won't be the one to judge you. But if that's what it is, that's how I built my relationship. So if I would work with a realtor and I would see that she would always call at 8 o'clock or she would always call at 7 o'clock, whatever, as in PM in the night, whatever. That's a person I would intentionally not work with the next time. I was like, that's not the chemistry I want to work with.
Right.
And so some of the best real estate agents that I work with, they know that I deliver everything that they need within the time period in the highest quality that I could. And I also understand that sometimes there can be urgencies. I have sometimes first-time home buyers whose appraisal might have come lower and they want to talk at 8 p.m. I'll pick up the phone and talk to them because I know that they might not be able to sleep very well if they don't have that conversation.
Right.
So I'm saying that I have rules, but I still have that flexibility where I know that this is a business where urgent stuff can happen. We work with people's emotions, and we have to handle that if we want to provide the best customer service. But having said that, I don't do that 9.9 out of 10 days. I understand where the urgencies are, and I'll still handle it the way I should. But I don't allow that to happen every day. It's like, I think it's Moore's law that says that the work will expand to the time you allow it to expand to. So if you have a project that if I told you, JP, is that, hey, this is a project, you can submit it next Monday. Somehow it's going to take the time until that Monday. But if I told you, hey, can you submit this by end of the day? Somehow you'll figure out a way to submit it by the end of the day. And that's what we do in our business, is because we say that we are available 24/7. People treat us like that, and we allowed us to be treated like that. And so we are like, okay, you can call me at 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and whatever it is. When you start enforcing that boundary, like when people reach out to me and say, and by the way, this is something that I used to do even when I was doing half a loan. And then they would be like, okay, as in what time on Saturday are you available? I said, hey, I would love to meet you on a Saturday. Unfortunately, I can't, as in that's the time when my daughter has a swimming class or whatever. So I'll give them a reason. I'm trying not to be disrespectful. What time during the work days work for you? I work from 8:30 to 5 and I'm available via phone or in person, whatever it is. And again, 9 out of 10 times, they find a way to see you or talk to you during the work hour. Mm-hmm. But what if I told them, oh, Saturday at 2 p.m. I'm available, as in they're not going to inconvenience themselves and they will talk to you at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. So when you push back, people understand that you have your boundaries as well. And next time that they treat you like that. So really, as in those 3-4 things is that you should have processes where the urgent stuff does not come up. You should be able to deliver on your timelines during the work hours so that during after hours, people don't count you. You have quality staff that can handle stuff on your behalf. And then you, at the end of the day, you should still be flexible because there are some times when it will actually be urgent stuff that you may need to handle after work. And that's fine. We will do that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, what you said, what really stuck with me was the things you say yes to, you're saying no to other things that you're not even thinking about. That really just stood out with me, man. That's really cool. And setting those boundaries and, hey, this is something, I know you're telling us how it is, but this is something you're working on every day as well.
Yes.
This is something I'm working on every day. So that was good. That was really stood out with me. Now we got about 10, 15 minutes left, Shashank. Yeah. We could talk all day. It's almost been an hour. How is the world different for you right now with coronavirus? Like, is there 1 or 2 things that are giving you some, I know you just said you don't stress, but is there anything giving you a little bit of anxiety right now on the day-to-day? Like, what are you seeing out there?
Sure. As in, of course I get anxious and I do get stressed. It's just that those are usually short-term, because the way I usually look at a lot of small stuff is that I have a 1-1-1 rule, which is when I have a problem that comes up, the way I look at it is that, will this problem still be significant tomorrow, like in 1 day? Will it still be significant in a month's time? And will it still be significant in a year's time? And a lot of things that we get stressed about or we get anxious about are usually things that that may not even be significant tomorrow, let alone a month from now or a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm looking at things like that, 90% of things are not worth to be stressed about. But if something that can have a long-term impact on me or my family or my business, then of course I'll be a little anxious about or stressed about or figure out a way to solve. And
Sure.
years like this, like years like 2020 or a pandemic like COVID-19, definitely throws you stuff that may last for months. As in, I don't know if it'll last for a year or something or not, but it can definitely last much longer than a month for sure. So am I more anxious about this? Not exactly, but I am trying to be more prepared about it for sure.
Okay.
I'm spending much more time reading and watching stuff that probably I did not know very well earlier. As in the last 6 weeks or so, I've learned more about, say, MSRs and margin calls and everything that I need to know about market is than I have known ever before. It's because if I am educated about these stuff, then I can maybe try to predict the future and prepare myself and the team accordingly. So for me, what has been different in the last 6 weeks, JP, is communication. I have been in more regular touch with my database and with my loan officers and with my operations team than I have probably ever been before. Because to all of them, I have some kind of obligation. To my borrowers, I have the obligation of educating them about what's happening. I don't want the CNN and CNBCs of the world to be their only news source where the people talk about the stuff is that, hey, the Fed cut the rate to 0%, you should expect a lower mortgage rate, which is not the kind of conversation I want them to be listening to or at least believing in.
Right.
So I want to be their news source. And that's why my communication to them has been more frequent than it has been, say, in the recent past. Similarly, with my team, I have a weekly company-wide Zoom meeting that I do now, which I never did because even a monthly call was enough for us to talk about what was changing and how we were changing. So, so both to my own employees and to my clients or to my entire database, I think I have been in much more communication with them. So that's something which is very different.
It's a positive too, right? You're communicating more, wouldn't you say? If you're going to flip the script, it's a positive.
Sure.
Now you're having more and more better communication with your staff.
Exactly.
And your clients.
Exactly. And I have come in with the mindset is that just like 2008, there is more market share to be gained during a crisis as an opportunity does present itself when we have crisis like this. And we need to capitalize on that. And I see that when there is more fear in the market, that's when you can gain more market share. So whether that's through more communication, the way I said, or creating, say, more content on social media or my blogging that I've been doing since 2009. Mm-hmm. So I have been more proactive, again, doing that, trying to get the message and increasing my influence on social media, and thus trying to increase market share, having more conversation with other loan officers who might be having problems with their current company because of the liquidity crisis that we have in the market right now. And the broker world might be better for them because we have access to 50, 60 investors. So if a couple of them have problems, we still have other 50 investors where we can send the loans to, which, by the way, can be worth its weight in gold right now, given the fact that we have access to so many investors in a market like this. It's never before I thought the broker channel was more relevant than it is right now, given all the options we have around investors and products. So all of that really, JP, is that, yes, are you anxious? Of course, because this is one of the things where predicting the future is nearly impossible because probably nobody in the world knows where it's heading. But can you be better prepared? And again, it comes from the mindset of you control what you control, and you don't sweat about the things that you don't control. You just prepare yourself better and stronger for those things that you don't know about, which are unknown. So that's what I'm working on, which has been different for me in the last 6 to 7 weeks, which is a little different from what I was doing before.
Sure. All right. So last question to wrap this up. I asked you this in Irvine, I believe, as well, and you touched on it, but we had a shorter time then. But one or two things that you can tell a loan officer that's just starting, or a loan officer or a small team that have been doing this for 25 years that might have to restart because of how lending has just changed over the years. Mm-hmm. Whether it's mindset or if it's a process, what's one or two things you can just tell everyone out there?
For me, everything starts with the mindset. As in, we usually, as an industry, are always looking for the next, say, strategy or next, say, tool, because we are asking all the time, hey, what CRM do you use? What texting platform do you use? And what LOS do you use? We are very tool-focused industry, so to say. Always asking, hey, should I be doing MBS Highway or should I be doing Mortgage Coach? Like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's a very, for me, that's probably third tier of thinking that you need to get to. You always need to start with mindset. So irrespective of where you are in the business, if you want to go to the next level, the first thing that it starts with is that, hey, how difficult it is going to be. Am I mentally prepared to do this? Do I have the discipline of doing it every single day when the results might not show for months at end? When I started blogging in 2009, JP, it took me 6 months of blogging every single week before I got the first phone call saying, hey, I saw you on the web.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 24 blog posts before first call that I got from someone saying, hey, I saw you. That's the kind of discipline we need to be mentally ready for when we go to the next level. Not so much about what tools do I need to get to the next level. You don't need it, as tools are secondary. I have managed almost $200 million of pipeline over Google Doc spreadsheet. So you don't need a fancy CRM to run this. As in, I'm not saying that there is anything wrong about having good tools because it will increase your productivity, but you need to start at your mindset. And the second thing is that you need to work on your strategy. It's like hope, we say that, like hope is not a strategy, right? You need to have, you can't just say, okay, I have trained myself to be mentally stronger and now I'm sure the clients will start calling me or something will happen. Some realtor will find me and send all their deals. That's not how it works. You need to have a strategy in place, which is you need to figure out which demographic you want to work with. You work on that niche and based on that, you build your strategy. Again, don't have a generic strategy. When I started in 08, 09, I specifically started working on first-time homebuyers because for me, education was huge. I started blogging for the same reason. And I knew that first-time homebuyers needed more education than anybody else. I started studying guidelines for FHA loans, which was non-existent in the San Francisco Bay Area. Nobody had ever even heard of how to do those loans because the loan sizes were so low before the crisis. So all of that, I spent hours and hours and hours and days and months into building my own learning so that I can address a demographic that I want to. That was my strategy, was to help first-time home buyers buy home. And for that, I needed to be better informed about that market. So build your strategy. And then the third level is your tools. So you start with mindset, you build your strategy, and then you get to tools saying, okay, if I want to educate people, what are the tools that are available to me? Oh, I can blog, I can do videos, I can do podcasts, I can do speaking, I can do webinars, I can do seminars, I can do radio shows, I can do TV. Like then those are just the tools those are just a means to an end. We sometimes just think the means are an end in itself, which they are not. And so if we build that hierarchy in our mind, I have no doubt at all is that anyone listening to this call can go to whichever level they want to. Of course, it won't be overnight. It won't be next year. It could be like me. It could take you 10 years to reach where you want to. But this is definitely possible. And it's like an immigrant with a year and a half in the country with $1,900 in capital and no connections and English as a third language could do it, then you really not have much of an excuse of not doing it.
What's the other language?
I have a mother tongue, which is very unique to India, but Hindi is India's national language. So I speak that. So I learned my mother tongue first, then Hindi, and then English. I learned my English alphabets when I was in the 6th grade, so I haven't done really badly after that.
Well, there you have it. Shashank, man of many talents. There he is. Hey, man, well, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. I know you got a busy day. I appreciate you taking out the time to help out AIM and give us some good content. Sure. So thank you so much, man. Good luck. If you need anything, of course, reach out.
Will do. Thanks, JP.
All right. Thanks, Shashank.